Tanzania's presidential elections is here, ladies and gentlemen. It started yesterday, 29th October, and already the police have been deployed on the streets of Dar es Salaam. In fact, there is a curfew in the capital city as we speak now because protests began springing up. There is a tricky thing or tactic happening in the country which requires a lot of wisdom and information to process, or else one might end up throwing support onto the wrong side, ladies and gentlemen. You see, this is the president of Tanzania. This is their first ever female president, and she has a vice president who is also a female for the first time. So it's some sort of women's power league going on there, and I'm happy for them. I'm happy for them all the same. Her name is President Samia Suluhu Hassan. Now, when you listen to her speeches, she sounds like a leader with a lot of goodwill for the people of Tanzania. She looks and sounds like someone who wants to bring a lot of change to the structures of the country. But she has done two major things which has raised a lot of eyebrows, whether internally or externally, in this election. And I need you to hear them and decide whether she did what was right or wrong. First thing, she banned the main opposition political party from contesting in this election, ladies and gentlemen, because that party wouldn't sign onto a mandatory electoral code of conduct. The main opposition party declined to sign onto the code of conduct by the Independent National Elections Commission of Tanzania, INEC, because they demanded for certain reforms to be done first. They pointed to issues such as alleged bias in the electoral system in favor of the incumbent government. They pointed to issues that concerns the fairness of the Electoral Commission and past conduct of the elections, ladies and gentlemen. They even argued that the code of ethics was inconsistent with the constitution of Tanzania. So, the main opposition party, which is Chadema, is banned from contesting, meaning they are not appearing on the ballot paper. And it has already started. That is the first issue, ladies and gentlemen. Now, bear this in mind. Tanzania, since independence, has practically had one party ruling all the way. Independence came in 1961 for Tanganyika, led by Julius Nyerere and the TANU party. Then Tanganyika merged with Zanzibar in 1964, and a new coalition party between the TANU party of Tanganyika and Zanzibar's party called ASP was formed. It is the Chama cha Mapinduzi which has held power till this day, ladies and gentlemen. And so, the main opposition made a decision to challenge the electoral process and see to it that those changes were effected before the election, or else give up altogether, because they believe the outcome will be the same under those same old rules. Ladies and gentlemen, that was the first. The second issue that's also raising eyebrows is this. The president barred the presidential candidate of the second largest opposition party from contesting. The candidate's name is Luhaga Mpina of the ACT Wazalendo Party. I hope I'm saying it right. He was barred because the office of the Registrar of Political Parties of Tanzania nullified his nomination on the basis that his party had violated the registry's rules for the candidate's nomination, ladies and gentlemen. In other words, the state authority responsible for the registry of parties found his nomination as not meeting the required legal and party standards. Ladies and gentlemen, I know this is technical, but obviously scanty, since the full details are not actually provided. And hence, the two main opposition parties are in no position to contest in this year's presidential election in Tanzania. Doesn't this sound like setting up the stage for suspicion and protest and election violence, ladies and gentlemen? You see, this female president of Tanzania wasn't elected into office. She became president constitutionally after the death of her predecessor, John Pombe Magufuli, in March of 2021. May his soul rest in peace, ladies and gentlemen. I always like that man. So, This is her first presidential contest, and critics say she felt a lot of people in the ruling class didn't like her new role as president, and many voters in Tanzania weren't in support of her presidency. Therefore, she needed to do whatever it took to maintain her position. And it seems that's what she's doing, ladies and gentlemen. These are all speculations out there, but the speculation and other matters is what's feeding into the narratives that's creating the protests in town today. I mean, think about this. When you are going into an election, a presidential election, and the main opposition party is removed from the ballot paper, and the candidate for the second largest opposition party is also barred from contesting, ladies and gentlemen, what do you think will be going on in the mind of these opposition party supporters? What do you actually expect to happen in your country? I mean, sometimes you don't have to play with some of these things. Some speculations among the ruling class even insist that had Magufuli been in office, she would have no chance of nearing the presidential portfolio. But it is what it is, ladies and gentlemen. And obviously, it appears she is setting the stage for an easy ride to victory. According to the official timetable of the INEC of Tanzania, the election result is scheduled to be announced by 1st November. That could mean that from today or by Saturday, the results should be out. As of now, the capital is under a curfew and security forces are alert all over the place. What is to expect when the official results are announced? Because it is obvious who is going to win, ladies and gentlemen. Tanzania has held a very good reputation in elections and in peace in general. But the idea of one party ruling all the time, ladies and gentlemen, isn't quite popular in this era. Even though she has some few achievements to her name in the 4 years of her presidency, there is still some level of asterisk as to whether she wants to turn into a dictator or not. She started off by lifting long-standing bans on political rallies and loosening media restrictions, and has ended up banning and barring rival candidates. I don't understand this, ladies and gentlemen. Her presidency has been more about creating more health services and, most importantly, promoting gender equality and women's empowerment. At the time of stepping in as president of Tanzania in 2021, if you want to know this, ladies and gentlemen, the nominal GDP of Tanzania was estimated at about $70.6 billion. And per capita income was approximately $1,130. Today, Tanzania's GDP is estimated at $79 billion with a per capita of $1,220, which means under her leadership, Tanzania has added $9 billion to their GDP and added $90 to their per capita income. What do you make of that? Unemployment rate in Tanzania in the last 4 years hasn't changed. It remains 9%. But other infrastructure like road network have all been impacted since she took over, ladies and gentlemen. The main question, however, is this, ladies and gentlemen. Is she already exhibiting signs of a dictator with the kinds of bans that came at her main opponents, ladies and gentlemen? Will Tanzania be united under her and continue in peace as it has been known all this while, ladies and gentlemen? And will she set Africa on a new trajectory of looking up to female presidents based on her performance? Ladies and gentlemen, what do you make of that? Or are we seeing the birth of a dictator? Write in the comment section what you make of this. And don't forget to sometimes let us know where you watch us from. Tanzania is a beautiful country by all standards and must remain so. There is no need for a violent protest that will destroy everything that has been built over the years. Trust me, there is no need. There are many African countries who would wish to trade places with Tanzania, and that should mean a lot for the people of the country. And to the president, this is my piece of suggestion to her. Banning opponents from competing isn't going to protect your stay or prolong it. It is your performance that counts. Let's not put impediments in the way of peace, no matter the circumstance. Peace must always be preferred. I wish the people of Tanzania all the best in these elections as we wait for the obvious election results. It is obvious, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Cyrus, and this is Tumtum Network in Accra, Ghana. If today is your first time watching us, do us this favor, ladies and gentlemen, and click on the button and the bell for more of our videos. I'll see you in the next one very soon. It is bye-bye for now.